Hello and welcome to Granada Reports, live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello, on the programme this evening.
A minimum of 42 years in jail for Thomas Cashman, the drug dealer who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell in her own home.
Everyone adored her. She was the baby of our family and my little love, my shadow.
The tragedy of Summerland, 50 years on, we look back at one of the Isle of Man's darkest days in the first of a series of special reports.
The last music heard by a German submarine crew, the haunting sounds play again after almost 50 years underwater.
A trophy for the Trotters, how Bolton ended more than 30 years of hurt with their magical Wembley win.
And weather-wise, we're looking at a relatively mild week, but as we head towards the Easter weekend, is something slightly cooler heading our way. I will tell you all about it later on in the programme.
Well, first, Thomas Cashman, the drug dealer who murdered 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, is sentenced to life with a minimum of 42 years. He'd been convicted of murdering Olivia, wounding her mother and attempting to murder another man.
In a final act of cowardice, Cashman refused to appear in court today to hear his sentence or to hear the saddest of impact statements from Olivia's family. In one of them, her mother Cheryl said she can't cope with the silence of life without her little girl.
Let's cross live to Manchester Crown Court to join our reporter Tim Scott. And Tim, some heartbreaking statements from Olivia's family from inside courts.
Yes, Gamal, and everyone who heard those statements in court today couldn't help but be touched by them. Olivia's murderer, Thomas Cashman, as you said, refused to show his face here, a move described by Judge Justice Yip as disrespectful to both the court and to Olivia's family. Before Cashman was sentenced, the court heard those victim impact statements from her family. Her father, John, said, "I'll never get the opportunity to see my daughter on her wedding day and walk her down the aisle. I'll never get to see her grow into the beautiful woman she was destined to become." Olivia's sister Chloe said, "Not only did I lose my baby sister, I lost my best friend. When I was told she'd passed away, I felt as though my heart had stopped beating." And fighting back tears, Olivia's mum Cheryl told the court, "I just miss hearing her voice. It's just so quiet. I would do anything in the world to have her chatting to me. It is so very lonely without her. Everything is just so quiet. I can't cope with the silence. I cannot get my head around how Cashman continued to shoot after hearing the terrifying screams, the utter devastation he has caused. He doesn't care. How could he? His actions have left the biggest hole in our lives that can never be filled." Sentencing Cashman, as you've heard, to 42 years in prison, Judge Justice Yip said a young child was shot and killed in her own home. Shooting into a family home with no regard for who may be caught in the crossfire is obviously a very significant aggravating factor. My colleague Emma Sweeney now has more on today's developments.
For the loved ones of Olivia Pratt-Corbell, there must have been times when they feared this day would never come. But this morning, the man dubbed by his own lawyer as one of the most hated men in Britain was escorted to court one last time. Thomas Cashman, a ruthless drug dealer, now a convicted child murderer. In a final act of contempt, he refused to enter the dock as the judge began her sentencing remarks in a televised address.
The killing of Olivia Pratt-Corbell is an offence that shocked not only the city of Liverpool, but the nation. Olivia's name is likely to be remembered for many years. She should not be remembered only for her dreadful last moments. Her family have spoken today of Olivia in life and of the hopes and dreams for her future, which were so cruelly snatched away.
All I want to know is what I'm arrested for.
Cashman, seen here on the night of his arrest, was also convicted of attempted murder, wounding with intent and 2 counts of possessing firearms. Today, in his absence, the court was told of the price he would pay for his actions.
All those sentences are to be served concurrently, meaning that the shortest period the defendant will be required to serve before he can be considered for early release from the sentence of life imprisonment is 42 years, less the 182 days he has served on remand.
Olivia's loved ones have remained a dignified presence throughout this trial, which saw the culprit attempt to get away with murder. Today on the steps outside court, a teddy bear made out of the 9-year-old's pyjamas was cradled, as her mother, Cheryl Corbell, remembered the little girl she called the light of their lives.
Everyone adored her. She was the baby of our family and my little love, my shadow. Now everything we do and everywhere we go was a constant reminder that she is not there with us. All that promise for her future so cruelly taken away.
Olivia Pratt Corbell died a scared 9-year-old, and we hope Cashman is haunted by this knowledge for the rest of his life.
A life that will now be spent behind bars. But for the family of the little girl whose future he so cruelly robbed, there is no amount of justice that can ever bring her back. Emma Sweeney, ITV News, Manchester.
Well, clearly many of you watching tonight have been moved by the impact on Olivia's family. Dave, for example, says, "What a coward of a man from start to finish. I'm sending huge love to Olivia Pratt Corbell's family tonight."
This one from Karen. She says, why does he have the option not to go to court?
LTP says, listening to Cheryl giving her impact statement brought a tear to my eye. My heart goes out to them.
And Vanessa thinks anyone refusing to go to court should have 10 years added to their sentence. It would soon change their mind, she says.
Many thanks for all of those in a story that has really shocked us all. Well, moving on tonight, an inquest has heard how an elderly woman died from hypothermia because she could not afford to heat her home.
Yes, Barbara Bolton was found at her house in Bury last December and rushed to hospital, where she died a few weeks later.
Her family say she had become fixated with not putting the heating on because she was concerned about how she'd pay her bills.
Our correspondent Mel Barham was at the inquest in Rochdale this afternoon. Mel.
Yes, Gamal, this is such a sad case that really shows the tragic consequences of the cost of living crisis. Barbara Bolton was an 87-year-old mother, grandmother and great-grandmother who the inquest heard today died because she was so worried about the cost of putting her heating on. The family have chosen not to release a picture of her, but she was found by her grandson back in December, slumped on a chair in her kitchen in Bury. She was so cold that initially her temperature was unrecordable. When they did finally get a reading, it was just 28 degrees. It should have been 37, and she was classed as profoundly hypothermic. Now, the inquest heard today that actually Mrs. Bolton had been a very healthy lady. In fact, she'd still been working as a pharmacy assistant until the age of 82, but she had become entrenched in her view that she just couldn't afford to heat her home despite encouragement from her family. Well, her son Mark, who was in court today, described his mother as a very proud but stubborn lady, and she'd refused their offer to help pay her energy bills. He said they'd even bought her extra heaters, but she'd only put them on when the family came round. Well, after being found in her cold home, she was rushed to hospital by ambulance to Fairfield Hospital, where despite getting appropriate treatment, her condition did deteriorate and she died several weeks later on the 5th of January. The cause of her death was put down as pneumonia linked to hypothermia. Well, the senior coroner, Joanne Kersley, today told the family what came across from both the hospital statements and from your own is how much, as a family, you cared and looked after your mum. It's clear she was fixated on the worry of putting her heating on, no matter what anyone was saying to her. Well, the coroner recorded a conclusion of misadventure, saying the only reason that Mrs. Bolton developed hypothermia was because she made that decision not to put her heating on.
Mel, thank you.
Well, in other news today, and the Prime Minister was in Rochdale today promising that political correctness will not stop a crackdown on grooming gangs. He announced new plans to tackle child abuse, including mandatory reporting, tougher prison sentences and specialist officers to help local police investigate. Ethnicity data of suspects will also be collected. Critics have warned that a focus on certain ethnic groups is a distraction from the wider issue, as Home Office data shows the majority of perpetrators are white, but the Prime Minister has defended the approach.
All forms of child sexual exploitation carried out by whomever are horrific and wrong, but with the specific issue of grooming gangs, we've had several independent inquiries look at the incidents here in Rochdale, but in Rotherham and Telford. And what's clear is that when victims and other whistleblowers came forward, their claims were often ignored by social workers, local politicians, or even the police. And the reason that they were ignored were due to cultural sensitivity and political correctness. Now, that's not right.
Passport office workers in Liverpool are beginning a 5-week strike in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. The PCS union's warning it is likely to have a significant impact on the delivery of passports as summer approaches.
Congratulations to Jodie Comer, who's had a good night at the Olivier Awards in London. She won Best Actress. Jodie, who's from Liverpool, shot to fame in Killing Eve, but won for Prima Facie, her one-woman show about sexual assault.
To any kids who haven't been to drama school, who can't afford to go to drama school, who've been rejected from drama school, don't let anybody tell you that it isn't possible. You know, it might take the stars to align and for you to be met with such generous and kind and patient and nurturing people, but it is possible.
Very well said, well said.
Now, the Isle of Man government has revealed plans to mark 50 years since a fire engulfed the Summerland complex on Douglas Promenade.
Yeah, so tonight on the programme, we're turning the clock back to 1973 when 50 people died in what was at the time the worst loss of life in a fire since the Blitz.
Many who suffered that night feel the catastrophe has never been truly recognised.
Survivors, bereaved families and eyewitnesses are telling us their stories, some of them for the first time.
In the first of a series of special reports, our Isle of Man reporter Joshua Stokes brings us the story of Summerland.
"50 years ago, this was the scene of a horrific disaster. A fire ripped through an entertainment complex in a catastrophe that shook this community to its core.
It looks as if there's no hope for Summerland, without a shadow of a doubt.
What's left here isn't just a derelict site, but a scar on the island's landscape. And it all started with a simple concept.
Taking shape, one of the most exciting holiday projects in the world. And going from the reality to this detailed model shows us what is to come.
Summerland was built to provide sunshine all year round. Wrapped in a plastic called Origlass, it created the illusion of artificial sunlight.
Cascading waterfalls will use the cliff face as backing, and there will be terraces of entertainment.
Thousands from across the UK travelled here on their summer holidays, all to experience what was one of the largest indoor holiday parks in Europe. But on the 2nd of August 1973, that holiday dream turned into tragedy.
The fire is spreading very rapidly indeed, because Summerland is ablaze and blazing down.
I could feel my clothes melting into me. I felt my hair singe and I knew that I was on fire.
Jackie was caught in the centre of the blaze. At just 13 years old, she lost her mum and her best friend in the fire.
The whole wall of the building went up in flames in a second, from the bottom to the top, just whoosh.
The heat is starting to build up now, and we're a good 100 yards away, at least 200 yards away from the flames.
There are many things that trigger memories, and you just have to get on with life, which I have done, but at a cost. My family and friends have to fall in with what I can cope with, and sometimes that's not very much. I cannot tolerate a candle on a table. Something every single day reminds me of it.
The fire was started by 3 boys, smoking in a disused kiosk. The flames spread undetected up the inside of flammable cladding called galbestos. Within minutes, Summerland became a death trap.
There was this almighty bang at the back of the building, and then suddenly it came racing towards us along the roof, along the walls. It was like a huge waterfall, only it was fire.
50 people died that night. 11 were children.
It was horrific. People were crying, and it was just an absolute horror movie. Never to be forgotten.
A year later, a public inquiry found corners were cut when Summerland was built to save money. Sprinklers weren't installed and fire safety was neglected. But no criminal charges were ever brought and no villains were ever singled out. A verdict of death by misadventure was given to those who had died.
It was an absolute disgrace. There was no value on human life and no regard for the life sentence that was put on those of us that were involved.
Heather lost both her parents and her sister in the fire, an immeasurable loss that she believes could have been avoided.
If the right procedures had been followed in the very beginning, it wouldn't have happened.
Nobody's blamed. Now we have corporate manslaughter. They didn't have that law then. If they did, it might have been a different story.
And nobody knows about it. People who visit the Anne don't even know what it's about. It's been forgotten.
"50 years on, and what's left is a physical reminder of that fateful night. Yet what happened here remains unknown to many, much to the heartbreak of those still living with trauma today. So this year, we're taking the time to reflect and to remember as we tell the story of Summerland, the forgotten disaster.
The second of Josh's reports tomorrow night. Now then, if you have ever tried to listen to an old vinyl record, you'll know how often they're covered in scratches.
How about this then? A pile of classical records which have been trapped underwater for 48 years on a German submarine.
The records were found on the wreck of the U-boat U-534, which forms part of a museum on the Wirral.
Our reporter Claire Hanna went to the Western Approaches Museum in Liverpool to investigate.
A journey back through time. The wreckage of a German U-boat providing a glimpse of life on board during the Second World War. And surprising hidden treasure.
This is Johann Strauss.
It's amazing.
Under the sea for 50 years, give or take. It's remarkable, isn't it?
U-boat 534 was sunk off the coast of Denmark in 1945. It was salvaged in 1993, brought to Birkenhead in 1996, and now records found on board have been cleaned up.
And listening to them, it's the emotive aspect of it. It makes you, like you say, humanised. It makes you imagine sitting in this horrible, cold, dark or boiling hot submarine. Not a pleasant place to be, and this was one of the few things that gave him comfort, and it's a really powerful feeling. The guys in them were still just young fellas. The captain was 29 years old. They were a long way from home. They were homesick. So this kind of stuff, you know, classical music, they had some like pop music, the equivalent of our Vera Lynn, that kind of thing. And it gave them something to listen to, something to connect them to their home. I suspect a lot of the English boats had some of the same songs on them. They may have been German composers, but everyone loves a bit of Strauss or a bit of Bach.
The records are being played inside the Western Approaches Museum in Liverpool, which was the headquarters of the Battle of the Atlantic during Britain's darkest hours.
This huge bunker right under street level in Liverpool, many of you might not know about it, but without it, during the Second World War, Britain would have starved and Germany would have won.
This building was designed to kind of hunt, track and kill U-boats. It was kind of still a hairs on the back of your neck moment, knowing that they've been at the bottom of the sea for 50 years, and also knowing symbolically that, you know, these were records belonging to the enemy and now playing in the headquarters of the other side. You know, it's an unusual set of circumstances.
One thing this discovery does show is the power of music, and if you're partial to a manicure, this might be of interest.
Something I've got to say about this is shellac. People might know this from fingernails.
Oh.
Shellac, isn't it?
Well, people who use shellac on their nails might not want to when they find out it comes from a bug's bum. It's can we say that on ITV? I have no idea. Shellac is secreted by an insect and then gathered up, and it was the main form of material for records until the end of the war and a little bit after that.
And that is one of the reasons these records lasted so long. Claire Hannah, ITV News, Liverpool.
Absolutely remarkable. On to football now, and a special moment for Bolton Wanderers, who've won their first cup final since 1989, beating Plymouth Argyle 4-0 to lift the Papa John's trophy.
Yeah, the picture says it all. Before the weather, we're ending on a real high tonight. What a weekend for Bolton. Chris Hall was with them at Wembley.
This is the most Bolton fans we've seen at a match in nearly half a century. 35,000 have come to Wembley for the first time since that FA Cup semi-final defeat 12 years ago. But today, their confidence is as high as the Wembley Arch.
Honestly, I think there's a feel-good factor about the town again. They just brought a magic feeling back to the town.
I think everybody's just buzzing. I think they're hoping that this can carry us on to getting through to the next level.
We've got Super 11!
It's just amazing. When you think 4 years, we nearly lost the club, and today we're here.
I'm going to Wembley. Bolton are massive everywhere we go.
After 15 minutes last time I was here and we're 3-0 down, hopefully today's going to be a lot better.
Come on you Whitemen, we can do it. It's been a long time, but we can do it today.
Wembley, you can't top it, can you?
Absolutely fantastic.
We're the famous Bolton Wanderers and we're going to Wembley.
Bolton had their hands on the trophy before a ball was kicked. Vernon Kay hoping it would bring good fortunes to his Wanderers family. It did the trick.
Good one, Dempsey! A sensational start for Bolton Wanderers! It's Dempsey again, squad across Charles!
2-0 up after 10 minutes. This time Bolton were the early risers, who had no problem putting the game to bed.
Elias Kachunga! Bedlam at that end of Wembley Stadium! Floated in by Morley, 4-0! This just keeps on getting better and better for Bolton Wanderers! And the Trotters have a trophy to take home. Lovely jubbly.
Dion, congratulations. What was that like to be part of?
Surreal. I was saying my whole body went numb when it went in the back of the net. I didn't know how to celebrate. But look, it was a brilliant result. We give the travelling fans something happy to go on with.
I'd have to look back at the goal because I can't really remember the goal and I can't even remember the celebration. I've never experienced anything like that before. It's the best moment of my career. It's incredible.
This was the weekend's biggest football crowd in all of Europe. Among the 80,000 were thrilled Boltonians like Vernon and Paddy McGuinness, and Sharon Britton, whose consortium saved the club, which now has its first cup win since the 80s.
This must give you tremendous confidence for this charge at promotion.
Yeah, look, again, days like today are addictive. We want more of them, and to get more of them, we have to win 8 more games and get ourselves in the playoffs, and then you've got an opportunity to come back here again in May. We'll enjoy tonight, but tomorrow it's refocused and ready for Friday.
Have you got them back in training tomorrow?
Absolutely.
So mean.
Sorry.
Well done, mate. Congratulations.
Take care.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
The club, which won the first ever cup final at Wembley 100 years ago, now aims to return within weeks and complete Bolton's fairy tale fight back. Chris Hall, ITV News, Wembley.
Yeah, get back to training.
No rest for the wicked.
Congratulations, brilliant.
Indeed. Here's James.
Mom, wet wipes, toilet or bin?
Bin. Why?
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Hello there, good evening. A pretty decent start to the week weather-wise, some lovely sunshine out there to enjoy, but cast your mind back to last month and you probably don't need reminding that it was the wettest across England since 1981. Looks as though tomorrow will be a repeat performance of today, plenty of sunny spells, but the high pressure gives way to allow this little system here to drift through. Bit of a slow mover Wednesday night into Thursday, but then Good Friday, hopefully things brightening up once again for what's set to be a pretty decent Easter weekend. And as far as tonight goes, it's going to see again a lot of clear skies around, temperatures falling away quite readily. One or two places could get well below freezing. Last night we got down to -4 in one or two spots, looking at -1 to 3 tonight. And towns and cities staying just above freezing, but that's still enough for a touch of ground or grass frost. Tomorrow then, the sunshine got a bit more power into it, so any frost will melt back nice and quickly. Lots of sunshine out there to enjoy, but you just start to see some high cloud drifting in from the west later on. That will just make the sun a little more milky. But now we're on to a bit more of a southerly breeze, so we'll see a degree or so extra on temperatures, topping out at around 12 or 13 Celsius. Looking ahead to Wednesday then, dry start to the day, generally cloudier, and as we head into the afternoon, we just start to pick up the first of these light bits of wet weather. That will get increasingly wet as we head through the overnight period into Wednesday. Thursday, once that rain clears early on, I think we should actually do pretty well. Generally cloudy, may pick up one or two showers, so temperatures are just creeping into double figures. But like I say, Good Friday is looking pretty good.
Cleaned up well.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Before we go, well done to 7-year-old Harvey Goodman from Warrington, who I hope has his feet up watching tonight.
Harvey walked a whopping 40 miles from Alderhay Hospital to his beloved Old Trafford, all to raise money for the hospital, where his cousin is being treated for cancer.
Yeah, we wish him well, and we're very pleased to report that Harvey has more than doubled his fundraising target. His family are rightly very, very proud of him. We're all very proud of you, Harvey. Good work.
Good job.
That's it. Good night.
Bye-bye.